Funny, I just forgot to turn that on, and there are people who watch every day. In fact, my sister and I were texting this morning. She says, "I'll see you online." Hi, Patsy. Sorry we're late. Today we celebrate the feast of Saint Bonaventure. He's known as the Seraphic Doctor. I'll explain why he got that name. But when he was born in, as I mentioned, 1221, and when he was a little boy in Italy, central Italy, he got a childhood illness that threatened his life. And it happened to be that St. Francis himself came along and prayed over this boy, and he was healed. Well, you grow up with that story because, Francis was already, like Mother Teresa of our own day, quite well known and honored and respected as a very holy man. And thousands had joined the ranks of the Franciscans, with the early Franciscans. Of course, Francis would have died 1,000 deaths to think his order was named after him. He called themselves the Little Brothers of Jesus, that we're the order of the Little Brothers, Friars Minor, OFM, Order of the Friars Minor, but meant Little Brothers. So he was all about humility. And Bonaventure grew up enamored by the spirituality of that great saint, and then became a saint. In fact, his name wasn't Bonaventure when he grew up. He had the same baptismal name that Francis had. It was John. He was named John, and his father's name was John. His mother's name was Mary, Giovanni e Maria. So they raised him in the faith, and of course this story accompanied him. So he went to pursue academics, and it was brilliant mind. But it was then that he decided to actually join this movement, this incredible movement that had been founded by Francis. But even though it was a strong movement, it was still in disarray by the time that Bonaventure discovered it, or was a part of it. Because Francis was a very strong and inspirational leader, and very opinionated. And his order, as the numbers grew, even though he was very strong, very holy, very inspirational, doesn't mean he was the best organizer in the world. And so keeping peace in the community of all the brothers, because people thought, I think we should go this direction. I think we should go that direction. We should be involved in these things. Maybe we should build religious houses. One story of Francis is he came back and found that they were actually building a house. He was so committed to poverty. We shouldn't own any property, any buildings, anything. Whatever we have is a gift from God or the generosity of people, but we should not own anything and be absolutely dependent upon God. What a great virtue, but hard to live by. But Francis lived that quite beautifully. But when he got back one time after being away on a retreat and saw they were building a house, he got up and started tearing it down. So when Francis died, the order started to split up. And it was Bonaventure who, as he grew into his Franciscan vocation, and then eventually into roles of leadership, he's considered the second founder of the order, because he helped to bring it to cohesion again, because he had the gift of administration. See, he had that great combination of gifts. It's very rare, I think, people who are strong administrators, but also very clear about the mission and moved by holiness. In the church, it's great when you see that combination of two things. I think Pope Francis has that beautifully. But St. Francis didn't quite have the organizational things, but Bonaventure did. That's why he's called the second founder. And Francis' nickname, because he had those visions of angels and received from an angel, seraphic angels, the stigmata, he's referred to as the Seraphic Father. So when Bonaventure was recognized as a second founder and his teaching ability, he's called the Seraphic Doctor. But I think what we draw from these great saints is that what's fundamental to them, again, Bonaventure wasn't canonized for being smart or a good administrator. He was canonized for his holiness. And holiness means not being perfect, but staying on the path to Christ. Staying on the path to Christ. Now, our sinfulness comes when we lose sight of Christ momentarily or even for a longer period of time and turn away and start pursuing our own personal interests in the sense of like self-centered personal interests. We lose sight of God's call to be a good spouse, a good daughter, a good friend, a generous person to the poor, or seeking God in prayer every day. We lose sight of what our purpose here is on earth, and that's where sin comes out of, is that kind of blindness. And Francis had that. He was always conscious of his sinfulness and seeking God's mercy. And so was, of course, the saint today, Bonaventure. But they stayed on the path. They asked forgiveness and then brushed themselves off, trusted in God's mercy, and kept moving forward. That's the path of holiness, not perfection, because that would be discouraging. Nobody could do it. But you see, by God's grace and trusting in his mercy, he always keeps us moving forward. And then we grow in virtue. And frankly, the other thing is to practice the virtues and try to grow in virtuous activity, generosity, service, love, study of the faith, kindness to others. All those kind of things, reaching out to a friend who's hurting and just needs a kind person to listen. You know, all those virtues, the more we fill our lives with virtues, there's just less room for sin. So I think we learn a lot from a great saint like today. There are gifts in study and organization and all the skills of life, but they should always be grounded in a spirituality, an absolute dependence upon God that Francis was such a great witness to and inspired today's Saint Bonaventure.